Yo, and welcome into week 9 of Pre-Gaming the SEC. Jacob Hester, Chris Doring back with you. Week number 9, CD. I can't believe how fast it's going by. You're already fully into pumpkin spice latte season, and we are starting to
Yes,
figure out who is who. Oh, it's
it's
actually
over with. What?
pumpkin spice season's over with?
I mean, it's almost over with. We're going into
Ah,
Halloween week here almost. So like
that's
literally
true.
we're about to be on to like what sugar cookie lattes and stuff.
That is true. That's true. The Christmas kind of themed. We just forget about Thanksgiving, but that's a whole different subject on maybe a different
Does
podcast.
Thanksgiving
I just remember
Thanksgiving have a
Alyssa sending the video of you enjoying the what was it?
it wasn't
Pumpkin cold
don't try to
cream
paint me
something.
don't try to paint me with that PSL. I'm much more sophisticated than a just basic
Yeah.
PSL. I that was the pumpkin cream cold brew with the delicious foam on top.
Um, if I could share that video through this podcast, and actually, I think we kind of, I don't know, it's a personal video, but we could put it on our YouTube if we get to a certain amount of likes. How about that?
Yeah. All
That's
right.
really
Yeah.
what we got to do. If we Big Turp will come in, and if we get to a certain amount of watches, likes, subscribes, whatever you got to do, and all that jazz, we'll put that out
What
there.
would you describe it as? Like, I guess in my mind, it's kind of like when a baby tastes something he likes for the first time and then just can't get enough of it. That's, I'm trying to lick every little crevice
I
to get
I
the
don't know
cream
that
out.
I can even hear on in podcast form on Sirius XM, on Spotify, YouTube, whatever. I don't think that I can give the description of what you did to that drink.
Dominated that drink.
All right. So, like we always do, we go through it. We go hold my beer. We go last call. We go pre-gaming the SEC because, after all, that's why we're here is to pre-game. And later on in the show, very excited to pre-game with us. We're gonna have former Georgia quarterback now doing big things in the media, snaps on volume with our guy T Bob. Also, you can catch him on the calls on ESPN. Got one this week. I think he's calling the UTEP Sam Houston game as we speak. Aaron Murray is going to join us. So, very excited for that because a game we're going to spend a lot of time talking about once we get into it is Florida, Georgia, Georgia, Florida. Where are we going with here?
It's Florida, Georgia. I mean, everyone knows it's Florida, Georgia, but the Georgia folks will try to sell you that it's Georgia, Florida. Either way, it's a special week, and this one's been a little more anticipated by the Florida fan base. Just watching what happened after they come from behind win over South Carolina. A lot of people feeling pretty optimistic about the Gators' chances to go over and be competitive. I don't know if they feel optimistic about getting a win, but
Right.
I think the matchup looks at least more manageable than it has in the last two seasons.
We'll get into it a little bit later on, obviously, when we pregame. But I will say this from afar, I feel like there's some things Florida can do well in that game. And I know maybe you're not ready to go there just yet. Maybe we're not calling for an upset or an outright victory, but I do think there's things that they do well in that game. And it's still Florida. And Florida's 5-2. Let's not forget that. They're 5-2. They're not 2-5. They're 5-2. And they
Yeah.
lost to a really good Utah team that just beat USC on the road last week. And they lost to a Kentucky team that was as dialed in as they've been all season long. And you ran into kind of a perfect storm there in Lexington.
Yeah, it's a team that I saw some more energy on the sidelines of that had a lot more fight. They're down 10 with 5 minutes to go and find a way to win. It's a team that now seems like they're more apt to throw the ball down the field, which I think you have to do if you're going to beat Georgia and take advantage of this defense. You have to hit explosive plays against them. And I think, this is a team maybe more than anything needed to have confidence in themselves. And I think that win against South Carolina went a long way for that too.
All right, let's go ahead and get into the hold my beer portion of pre-gaming the SEC CD. As any good host, I'm going to allow you to go first.
Yeah, it's been kind of an up and down year with me and the Alabama fans. I've been critical at times. I think sometimes they've been deserving of criticism. And maybe the first half of that ball game against Tennessee was one of those times. Or maybe we need to give credit to the Vols because the Vols were fantastic from the get-go. You look at what Joe Milton was able to do, 9 of 9 on his first 9 throws of the day. The receivers were catching the football. They put up 187 yards of total offense in the first quarter alone. And they go to the halftime locker room 13 points down. And Alabama comes out immediately, grabs the second half kickoff, 2 plays, 41 seconds, your 75-yard drive for a touchdown. And then the defense gets a 3 and out. They take control of that side. And you got the momentum clearly on your sideline. So It's
Yeah.
not Joe Milton. It's not necessarily, Dallas Turner. It's a team effort. And I thought that 27-0 run is worthy of a hold my beer acknowledgement, because they were struggling. And that I thought the SEC shorts, I don't know if you saw that SEC shorts this week, but I thought they
Not
did a good
yet.
job. Check it out. There's some teams holding the first half Alabama hostage,
Yeah.
and then second half Alabama shows up, and
Yeah.
he's the big brother for sure.
First half for Alabama offensively: punt, punt, fumble, punt, touchdown, interception, end of half. Come back in the second half: touchdown, field goal, punt, punt. But as you can tell, they had much more momentum, including, a turnover on defense. And so it looked completely different than it did in the first half. And I probably would have gone there if you didn't, CD, as far as hold my beer. Oh, you thought that's who we were in the first half?
Yeah.
No, 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 no. Hold my beer. We'll show you
Is
exactly who we are.
is Alabama Edward Norton in the first half and Brad Pitt in the second half? Is it Tyler Durden? I mean, it feels like that's what they
Oh, I
are.
love a little Fight Club reference.
Yeah, I mean that at least in that ball game, it felt like, that it's a tale of two different halves, and it's kind of been the
Yeah.
story of the whole season. I mean, think about, being down against Texas A&M, struggling in the South Florida game. They definitely have showed resiliency. They've shown some real vulnerabilities, but they've
Yeah.
also shown a great quality of fighting back and not panicking, which I think goes a long way.
I think that's a great comp. I think Big Turp, you need to clip that and make sure that comp gets out there on the interwebs, on social media, because I kind of agree with you. And I don't know if you just watched Fight Club. We're not supposed to talk about Fight Club, but since you did, I actually like the comp.
I think it was probably inspired by that SEC short. You got to check those guys out; they do a great job. But definitely, very reminiscent of two totally different personalities for sure.
Ooh, man, that's great. My 14-year-old begging me to watch Fight Club, begging. And I told him, if you go undefeated in middle school football, I'll allow you to watch Fight Club. They went undefeated in middle school football. Now it's the only thing he talks about.
Oh, you still haven't shown it to him yet?
No, I let him. I let him. Look,
Oh, he
hey,
lied.
hey, all we have is our word. And
Yeah.
so there's probably people listening right now that might be judging me, but hey, I told him something. I didn't think it would come true. It came true, and I got to stick to the
Well,
word.
I promise you, there's nobody judging you for letting your 14-year-old that's listening to this podcast, if there
That's
is,
fair.
double birds to you.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I also love the team that I'm about to talk about in Hold My Beer. Oh, you think that we're a cute team? You think that we're just a team that's going to be here at the beginning of the season? You think that we're going to go away? Okay, well, hold my beer. Watch what we can do. And I'm talking about, you probably already guessed it, the Missouri Tigers, 34-12 over South Carolina. And I'm going to be honest, like, the score was
Wasn't even that
probably
close.
not indicative of
No.
what that game was. It was a beatdown. Eli Drinkwitz, who's one of our favorite coaches in this profession, has really found something. Kirby Moore, Blake Baker, two of the best up and coming offense and defensive coordinators, I think, personally, in the country. And they are really putting their players in position to succeed. Brady Cook, right? I mean, look, 15 to 25, 205 and a touchdown, because that's what the game called for. This game also called for Cody Schrader to get behind a really good offensive front right now and run 26 times for 159 and a couple of scores. Like, this is a complete team, CD. Look at the receivers: 5, 6, 2, 2 as far as catches, right? Not a lot of receivers, but they're spreading the wealth. They've got 3 dudes, and they got a running back in Schrader, and they are dangerous. And I love what Blake's doing on the other side. And full disclosure, I'm friends with Blake Baker. And so I could say, yeah, he's just talking about, his friend. If he wasn't my friend, if he was my worst enemy, I would praise Blake Baker for what he's doing in this Missouri job. Remember how bad they were defensively before he got there last year, CD.
Literally overnight turnaround from one year to the next, and what he's been able to do. And let's not forget, I mean, we're going to be pre-gaming this week, but the next week we'll be pre-gaming a game that'll take place in Athens that will rematch maybe the best defensive effort that anybody had against the Bulldogs last year. The most physical matchup that Georgia had last year was Missouri, that front seven. So I'm excited about that week. I don't want to wish this week away, but you're right about Blake Baker. You're right about this Missouri team as a whole, too. I still think there are too many people just patting them on the head. What a cute story it is, and
Yep.
not giving them the credit they deserve about being a really good, solid, all around football team.
Before we go to last call, I want to talk about the running back, and not because it's a position that I played. I mean, maybe some of that, but I want you to talk about Cody Schrader
Yeah.
because he's a walk on.
Yeah.
That's how he got to Como. And if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know, but if you don't, I'm going to brag on my boy. CD was a walk on. That's how he started his Florida career. All right. What number did you start with at Florida? 42?
42 was
Yeah.
the jersey number. Yeah.
And that tells the fact that I know that you're my dog, right?
I
Number
know that. I was
42.
gonna say
Okay.
that.
That's the
Yeah.
number you started with. And you found your way onto the field. And once you got there, they couldn't take you off. And there was no scholarship player that was as good as you at the time that you were at Florida. Okay. And I love that. And I wasn't that, but I was a 2-star recruit. So I can't even imagine what you went through to get to that. But you never complained. You went to work, you went about your business, and you ended up being one of the best receivers to ever play in the SEC. That's not me as your friend saying that. That's the stats. The stats, right. All right. Words lie, numbers don't. And CD's still up there. And so I say all that to ask this. When you see a player like Cody Schrader walk on, bet on himself, and go out there and have the success, he's almost already at 1,000 yards. I know that has to mean something special to you.
Yeah, it does. I really have a soft spot in my heart for walk-ons, and it's nice to kind of see the success that a lot of these walk-ons are having this year. I mean, go look at Florida. Willie Jackson's son, Khalil Jackson, is one of the starting wide receivers for the Gators. Mario Anderson, a guy that transferred from Newberry College. I guess they gave him a scholarship at some point along the way at South Carolina, but having a great year after betting on himself. But Cody Schrader, to not only be as reliable as he has been, but I really feel like he gives that offense the physicality trait that they need. Like, they have the passing game, they're able to throw the ball around, but the physical complement that he brings, and not take anything away from the offensive line has, because there were massive holes that he was running through en route to that 149-yard performance. But I watched the way that Cody Schrader finishes runs. And he finishes runs like he has something to prove. And I think that's the thing that I took away as a walk-on, that I'm sure he took away as a walk-on, is that you always are proving yourself. And once you achieve success, there's no way you're going to let that success get taken away from you after you've
That's a great
traveled
point.
the path that you had to travel.
That is a great point. I hope our listeners caught that. They are not going to take away what I've worked so hard for. And I don't want this segment to sound like, sure, the 2-star guy and the walk-on are hating on 4- and 5-star guys. That's not what this is. But when you do what they've had to do to get to that position, I'll be damned if anybody's taking this. So many times we talk about it. We talked about Josh Williams at LSU so many times last year and how big of a part of that team he was, and that victory over Alabama for LSU. And he was a walk-on. It's one of those things where you can see it in every single play out there that they're giving you everything they have. And so I definitely wanted to highlight Cody Schrader here again and hold my beer, because I think that's a player and that's a team in Mizzou that deserves to be talked about as a LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee teams trying to get to the top. Now, LSU went to Atlanta last year and they've won national championships. I'm just talking about like within the last couple of seasons, you sit right there in Alabama in the West, Georgia in the East, and you're trying to get to that level. LSU figured it out last year, trying to do it again in a couple of weeks. But you know what I'm saying? Like Mizzou feels like they're more of that than they are maybe of Kentucky, which we love, but they haven't been able to get close to knocking on that championship door.
Yeah, I think for Kentucky, it's been the last couple of years that they've had something missing. Last year it was the offensive line that really was their Achilles heel. This year it's the passing game. I think you look at Missouri, they are complete, in terms of what they can do. They have a superstar quarterback that is really consistent. It doesn't turn the ball over. They have a physical run game. They have an offensive line that's physical up front.
Yeah.
The receivers, it's a superstar with a complement of really talented people around him. And then defensively, just that stout front seven that they have with a pair of really good cornerbacks. As I'm talking about it, I'm getting excited because I don't see there's not a lot of holes on that Missouri depth chart, really.
I mean, where, and
yeah.
And I think it's something that separates them. They're getting like big recruits off of this, and it's a unique recruiting area. They're the only school there in that area. And St. Louis plays great high school football, and now they've got the number 2, I believe, and we talked about this earlier today, number 2 overall ranked player committed to them. Remember the videos whenever it happened and Drink's like basically jumping into the arms of his assistant coaches? Like that's that kind of guy. And they're getting that guy
Yep.
at,
Yep.
at a place like Mizzou. So, shout
Remember
out to them.
heading into the season, there were people that were saying that Drink was on the hot seat despite getting a
Oh,
contract
yeah.
extension, like the most ridiculous statements, and he's certainly proved them wrong. Already exceeded the win total that his previous high. You know, they've gotten to bowl games
Yeah.
the last 3 years, but they've only won 6 games in each of those seasons. Now they're already at 7, and we haven't even turned the calendar to November yet.
Yeah, 7-1, and right now a couple of opportunities certainly to win games and be surprised if they didn't win those games. All right, let's go to last call. But like we do all the time, before we go to last call, I want to remind you about our friends over at Richards Honda. RichardsHonda.com is the website. And no matter what you're looking for, no matter what your lifestyle calls for, maybe you need a van, maybe you need a full-size SUV, maybe you need a mid-size SUV, maybe it's a truck, sedan, whatever it is, they have got you covered. And the website, incredibly easy to navigate, RichardsHonda.com. Richards Honda, home of the warm and fuzzy feeling. All right, CD, let's go to last call. Something you saw from a week ago that has maybe stood out to you more than anything, or CD, it can be something to this point in the season as we get ready for week number 9. One final thought on something you want to do before we move on to the pre-gaming portion of, you guessed it, pre-gaming the SEC.
Yeah, I want to go back. I feel like maybe the most under talked about story last week and maybe for the entire season is Ole Miss. Ole Miss sits here with 1 loss. They lost to Alabama in Tuscaloosa. They've handled their business. It may not be the most flashy display of handling their business, but they're a team that's in the race that's going to be cheering their ass off for LSU coming up in another week. So, this is an opportunity for Ole Miss to take that next step. And I thought the game in Jordan-Hare, albeit against an Auburn team that's under talented and is in the process of being built by Hugh Freeze, that's a tough place to play. I mean, look no further than the way that Georgia went there and struggled. This could have been a potential pitfall that would have had people saying, Ole Miss is a cute story, but they're never going to really win important games. This was not a top 25 opponent that they were playing, but it's one that they needed to have to continue to legitimize their program. They stay in the 1-loss category. They go and pull away in the second half behind a big run game. It feels like they're getting that MO back. They're a run-first football team. Feels like they're starting to figure that out with Quinshon Judkins and Ulysses Bentley. Jackson Dart back to being healthy again, contributing on the ground too.
Yeah.
And their defense is a lot better. I mean, Pete Golding has done a nice job outside of the LSU game where, it was a track meet. I think the Ole Miss defense is much improved, and they're going to have a big say in what happens in this conference down the stretch. Looking at their schedule, it's very manageable with that trip to Athens being the real focal point. And I'm just interested to see what they can do to a Georgia team that's going to be coming off back-to-back games against Florida and Missouri.
It is a situation where they could show up to Atlanta for the first time. So everything right there in front of them. And so I do agree with you in the fact that they've got things on the defensive side figured out, I think, more than people are giving them credit for. Let's call it like it is. Like, sometimes we lose sight of this. Let's also know who they were going against.
Yeah.
An LSU offense that's put up generational type numbers.
Yeah.
Just like with LSU's defense, like, it's not great by any means, but where they struggled the most, Missouri and Ole Miss's offenses are pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Right. They shut down the bad defense offenses in Mississippi State and Auburn. So I think there's a middle ground for LSU, but even more so for Ole Miss. Like, if LSU and Jaden Daniels had 1 loss, he'd be the Heisman frontrunner, and it wouldn't really be close.
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels right now has over 500 yards more of total offense than Michael Penix Jr. and 10 more touchdowns. 10, not 2, 10 more touchdowns total than Michael Penix Jr. And Michael Penix Jr. has been a stud all season long. And also JD5 has 1 less turnover than Michael Penix. And so that's the kind of offense that you struggle with and got into a track meet with. I mean, I think that LSU offense is special. And so I do think that this Ole Miss defense is being graded off that game more than the totality of the season. Would you agree?
That's a good point. I do think so. And I think going back to that second half of the Missouri game, they've been much improved. They created that interception of Brady Cook to break that long 365 straight passes without an
Yeah.
interception streak. And then they held Missouri to only 2 scoring drives in the second half of that game. And since then, they've been pretty much lights out, albeit against less talented offenses in Auburn and Army. But I do feel like they're making some strides, and part of improving is just confidence. And I think the defense has gained some confidence in maybe taking advantage of some lesser opponents the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how the LSU defense kind of get away real quick is going to match up when we get into that game. I know we won't this week, obviously, with it not on the schedule, but in 2 weeks, LSU versus Alabama. LSU down right now to 3 freshman corners. That's what they have available. And Sage Ryan, who's a converted safety. They no Denver Harris, no Deuce Chestnut, who they brought in from A&M and Syracuse. J.K. Johnson from Ohio State. He's not played this season. He's been out. Ty Alexander, Southeastern transfer, Southeastern Louisiana. He gets hurt intercepting a ball against Army last week. CD, man, as much as that offense can score, I don't know that you can face any team and feel good about going into it with a converted safety and 3 freshmen at corner.
No. I mean, that is certainly a concerning point as we look forward throughout the rest of the season. But, we talked about the matchup between LSU and Alabama. I don't know that anybody in the country can score with LSU. I mean, even if you're getting into the shootout, like I'm not sure Alabama doesn't maybe fall short of that, in terms of trying to match score for score with Jaden Daniels. I don't think it's a great matchup. So at least if you're going to have the youth that they have at the corner positions, you have an eraser in Jaden Daniels and an offense that can score quickly.
All right. Last call for me. Sometimes in this business, like I don't want to be right. And I mean that. You know me. I do think there's people in our business that they only want to champion for when they were right. I actually hate that. I think that you need to kind of have full disclosure. It's why I do right, wrong, and indifferent, because I want to tell you what we got wrong and where this team deserves credit because we said this about them. Good or bad. Like you got to point out, in my opinion, you got to point out where you're wrong and not always when you're right. So I don't want this to sound like, oh, look at me, I was right. But unfortunately, I was right on Arkansas. SEC Media Day, I picked them dead last in the SEC West. And when I started telling people that, I got some looks. And some of our great friends in this business, KJ Jefferson, Rocket Sanders, dead last. I'm like, there's a disconnect there. I don't love the offensive coordinator. Dan Enos. Dan Enos has been good when he's had elite talent. He's getting there late. Kendall Briles leaves, and then Loggins, who probably would have been the OC, well, he gets scooped up by South Carolina. Like, where are you at as far as your option? Dan Enos has been a couple of places. He's been recycled to the SEC. That just, to me, does not scream good fit, and it hasn't. And what we saw on Saturday, and credit to Zach Arnett and Mississippi State because they held them to 3 points, that was one of the poorest offensive game plans I've ever seen in my life. Just straight up. One of the worst I've seen. And if I'm an Arkansas fan, like change had to be made and Daniels had to go. It had to happen because it had gotten worse every game. Like for as good as you looked against LSU and some others, like it just continued. There was no rhyme. There was no reason. And I hate the fact that I was right on Arkansas because Sam Pittman is one of our favorites in the league. We get a chance. So when we say that, and you probably like, y'all say that about a lot of coaches. We do because for us, it is a very fortunate thing that we get to be around these coaches.
Yeah.
We get a chance to know them really on a personal level. And one of them, my favorite trip that we cover a lot of great events. It's Destin. It's SEC spring meetings. It is Destin, Florida. It is, we get the coaches as human beings and not football coaches. And so Sam Pittman, gracious with his time. When we have our little mixer, he will sit right there and talk football with us for as long as we want him to sit there and talk football. I think Sam Pittman has a spot in college football, but it has not worked in Fayetteville. And CD, I hate it. But I don't think I don't know that he's going to be there much longer.
You're saying it doesn't, you don't feel like it's worked since he's taken over, it's not working this year? Because I think a lot of it goes back to
This
what you said. It
I don't think it
hasn't
works.
worked.
I don't think it works this year, but I'm afraid from some of the chatter that we're hearing that he's going to be out of town. What do
Yeah.
you think?
I mean, I think the Dan Enos hire, unfortunately, has been, the anchor that's dragged him down to this point where he is. I hope that it serves as insulation, getting rid of Enos and maybe, finishing the season with a little bit of hope. But I would have said that, hey, I'm not firing a guy that the players have played hard for, that are going out there and being competitive in their games, and then they go out and play like that on Saturday against Mississippi State, a home game. It just felt very reminiscent of some of those games that late in Chad Morris's time there in
Yeah.
Fayetteville, where they're losing to San Jose State, North Texas, and those folks, that Western Kentucky, that apathy started to set in. And I've said this before, but apathy's the worst. Apathy's worse than anger. When folks just don't care anymore at all, and it felt like a lot of people in that stadium didn't care. That's a bad sign.
It is a very, very bad sign. And again, I hope that he gets another opportunity. I hope he gets a chance to bring somebody in, because this is my belief. I don't have sources. I don't have inside information. I feel like Dow Loggins would have been the OC, and then South Carolina scooped him up, and then Kendall Browse ends up at TCU. And it was a little bit of okay, we don't want to maybe go bold this late in the process. Let's go get someone who's been in the league, had some success in the league, done some things at Maryland, and I feel like it can be a safe play. And yeah, is that disrespectful to Dan Enos? Probably so. And I'm not trying to be. I just think in this league at this moment, it was not the best fit, and it felt like the safe play instead of the play that they probably needed to make, because they felt like they were at the 11th hour and needed a dance partner on the dance floor.
If it makes adding insult to injury, their schedule does not get any easier down the stretch with what they have to play the rest of the way. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And Hunter Yurachek, one of the best athletic directors around, so trust him to make a good decision there.
All right, that is going to do it for last call. Before we get to the pre-gaming portion of pre-gaming the SEC, I want to remind you about our friends over at Blue Delta Jeans, bluedeltajeans.com. And this is where you go for that custom fit. Nothing feels as good as custom fits. We tell you that all the time, and they've got all of their fall specials going on right now. This Blue Delta Jeans, your pants, your measurements, bluedeltajeans.com. All right, very excited to welcome on this week's guest to Pregaming the SEC, week number 9 here in the SEC, and that is someone who is the SEC passing touchdown leader, the SEC career passing yards leader. He is more thankful that Mississippi State changed their offense, and it's now a bad offense more than anybody in this country, and that is our guy, Aaron Murray, who you can also hear right here on Channel 374 SEC Radio and over on Snaps with our boy T-Bob Abear. He just did a game last night as well. Aaron, you got more jobs than I think we do, which is hard to do.
Yeah, way too many jobs, according to my wife. And I tell you what, guys, like, I know there's only 7 points on the board last week for Mississippi State, but that offense looked electric. Mike Wright was moving it. I mean, I think they should do it the rest of the season.
Yeah,
like, come on, keep him in the game.
Be honest. When you watched LSU versus Mississippi State earlier this year, how grateful were you that this is now an offense that has no clue who they are?
And I like Will. I don't know if you guys have been around him at all, but he's a great kid. I want to cheer for. I do cheer for him. Like, I have no ill will. I'm just more upset about the COVID-free year. That's all I care about.
Yes.
Like, the fact that you get a 5th year to pad your stats and play more games, when like that's not what it is intended for. You're signing a 4-year essentially contract with the university, and now you're going to get a 5th year to break records. So listen, if he does break them, I'm just saying there needs to be an asterisk by it that, hey, he got this record in 5 years of playing football, not 4 like you're supposed to.
Yeah, let's talk about it like per game. I think it would be better that way, because when I was playing, man, we only had 11 regular season games. They wouldn't count the bowl games towards our career stats. Now these guys will play 14 and 15 games if they go all the way, and they're counting the extra years.
Would you have, CD? What would you have? Would you still have the record if they had bowl games?
No. See, that would have been a nice argument. I was going to leave that part out, but
wait, were you not catching touchdowns in bowl games? I mean, I know Nebraska scored a lot of touchdowns. You didn't get any?
I had 8 for 125, but never got any injured in that game. But
so
I did leave the part out that I
you're
was.
a guy that's a 20, 20 to 20 player. You're Derek Carr, basically.
But that wasn't my whole career,
Wow.
man. I was more like a red zone kind of guy. So I didn't
Oh.
get that in the bowl games. But hey, it is a weird feeling though, isn't it? Like when Devontae Smith was tracing the record, I was like, man, this is awesome. I'm happy for him. But at the same time, I held that record for 25 years. There's something kind of weird about not being able to say you caught more touchdowns than anybody else in the whole conference before.
Look, but
Yeah.
you can make a record sound like however you want it to. Like if I want to, I can be like, hey, you know what? I'm the last fullback to rush for 1,000 yards in the SEC, even though I did it from tailback. But nobody really, they don't question that. They're like, oh yeah, you play fullback, sure. Just make it what you want to make it.
And see, you can still say for the University of Florida, which is an incredible tradition. So like that's just
I do have that record.
You do have that record, and I feel pretty confident that I'll have at least all the passing records for the University of Georgia for a long time.
That's true.
I mean, when it comes to quarterbacking, like there's extra games, but you have to stay 4 years.
Yeah,
you have to stay 4 years, and you have to be able to not just stay 4 years, but you have to play for start for 4 years.
Yeah,
and in today's game nowadays, guys are moving all over the place. Like if you're good enough to play early, and you're going to be setting records, like listen, I could have left. Like I'm not like this incredible pro prospect. I'm like 6'1". I have good arm strength. I'm accurate. I'm smart, like all that. Like I'm not this big, giant, big arm, fast kid. But after my junior year, it was a pretty weak draft class. It was like EJ, Gino, maybe Klein, I think, from Kansas State, but he was more of a runner. Like there wasn't a lot of guys. Like deep down inside, I'm like, I should probably go because there's only a handful of quarterbacks that are going to get drafted. But I just lost an SEC championship game by 4 yards.
Yeah.
And was 4 yards away from going to a natty. Like it's kind of hard to leave that situation and not come back and give it one more go. Came back for the 4th year. Obviously put up some good stats and got the records, but that's what it takes. But most guys, if you're good enough to get to that number, you're probably leaving after 3 years anyways. So I feel pretty good.
Do you regret not leaving, or was that last year somewhat fulfilling enough to overcome maybe the coulda, shoulda, woulda?
A little bit, because not only did we not win the next year, I also tore my ACL. So, I go into the whole draft process as, a guy that was already going to be fighting you're only 6 foot, you don't have elite arm strength. And now I can't, prove myself at the Senior Bowl. I can't go to the combine. I can't, I did like a half-ass pro day. So I didn't have the chance to really prove scouts that I could do this, and this. And, listen, I still got drafted in the 5th round. So like I got drafted, I had opportunity and had my cup of coffee in the league for 3 years. But I would say, like, if I would go back, I'm torn because like your senior year, you guys know, like it's a special time. And I love the moment. I love senior night. I loved, all that. But I think from a business standpoint, it probably would have been smarter, because you look at the draft class that I came out in: Blake Bortles, Manziel, Teddy Bridgewater, Derek Carr, AJ McCarron, and Logan Thomas, Tom Savage. I mean, it was a loaded draft class. So you look at that draft class, which had like 10 plus drafted compared to the year before, probably would have been a lot smarter to leave that year.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you a question about who's smarter, because I've been told so many different things from Doring about Florida, Georgia, or Georgia, Florida. What's the smart way to say that?
Well, obviously, if you went to one of the universities, you use that name first. So like if you went to Florida, you're going to call it Florida, Georgia.
Okay. What about me though? What about an LSU guy?
I always tell, and I've told, our mutual co-host T-Bob this a million times, and he just still loves to mess it up. It goes to the team that won the year before. That's my opinion. So like if you're an outsider, if you didn't go to one of the universities, it is called what the previous team won it by first. So last year Georgia won, so it should be Georgia, Florida to those outsiders.
We were told yesterday by Andy Staples that a neutral site game goes alphabetically, so it should always be Florida, Georgia.
Where'd Andy Staples play college football?
Yeah,
he played at Florida. But he's so smart. Have you seen some of his columns? How smart he is. I mean, that guy would know.
He's way too smart. Yeah.
It is the number 2, academic school in the SEC. So you got that to it. I'll give you that one.
Number 1 public university in the country, Aaron. Come on. Wow. Yeah, how about that?
My college my university, I should say, is not that. but you know what? I got a degree
Hey,
and everything. Got a piece of
CD,
paper.
CD, you'll appreciate this. I remember when I was getting recruited, there was an article that came out that said LSU should be banned from all D1 sports because of how bad the academics are. No lie. And my mom saw that and said, "We're not going on this visit. Like we're like that was one
Cancel
of the
the
schools I was going to
visit.
go visit." My mom canceled the visit. She goes, "You're not going there. Let's not waste our time." I
But
was like,
wasn't that a
"Wow."
reflection of like the public school system as well? Doesn't everybody go to private school in Louisiana, Hess?
A lot of people do. Yeah, a lot of people go to private school. My children go to public school here at the lab
Not
school.
hold on, no, yeah, not public school.
It's
It's the
public school.
same as the
If
school I
you
The
went to,
charter,
if you get state funding, you can't be a private school.
but it's
it's
still
a
part of the
charter school.
university.
Yeah, it's actually part of it's
Yeah.
actually so Aaron, my kids go to University Lab that's on LSU's campus. CD
That's
went to
sweet.
PK Young, which is on Florida's campus.
That's sweet.
Yeah. So all right, let's go back. We're talking Florida, Georgia, Georgia, Florida. I love the fact that you're from right down the road. You know, I've talked about before, you know, all the people that you knew that were Florida folks. You went to Florida games growing up. Like, what is your first memory of Florida, Georgia from the perspective of being a fan?
Just watching it. Like I never went to the game as a fan. You know, I just watched it at home. And to be honest, like I wasn't like a major college football fan growing up. I was more of a pro football fan. So we had season tickets to the Bucks. Like so, I went to a lot of Buccaneers games. You know, Tampa's not really a college town. So you know, we got the Rays, we got the Bolts, we got the Bucks. Like that's the big focus. But you know, I would watch the game every now and then. One of the ones that really stand out to my mind. This was before I committed. Was the and I talked to Noshawn about this the other night. The Noshawn leap, where Noshawn jumped in the end zone
Yeah.
and you know Georgia
Yeah.
rushed the field. That was my one big memory of as a fan pre-commitment and really being recruited of that rivalry and how kind of cool it was. You kind of watched it sparingly there here and there, but like growing up in Tampa, man, I went to a lot of, if I did go to football games, college football games, I went to Florida games.
Mm-hmm.
My uncle was a Bull Gator. He's a big donor. He went to Florida undergrad. He went to Florida law. So we would have tickets like at the 50-yard line, like 2 or 3 rows up. So like I was there having a blast when I would go and just loved every moment about it. Yeah, I remember my first time going to a bar illegally was there at the Swamp in Gainesville after a game. And I don't think I'm gonna get my dad in trouble because it's been
Yeah.
over
Statute of
10 years
limitations.
since
Oh, statute of
yeah.
limitations way
Wait,
over. Yeah.
I remember him looking at my brother and being like, it was us and my uncle, so it was us four boys, and him saying, "Hey Josh, your brother looks enough like you. Let's see if we can get him into the bar with us." I was like, "Okay, let's go." And we got in and we had a blast. So yeah, like even
How old are
watching
you
that
at
game
that
of under,
point? 16?
mm,
17?
Probably 17.
probably 15 or 16,
Oh,
because my
yeah.
brother's 6 years
I
older
was
than
trying
me,
to help you out.
so he's
Oh, that's
21.
great. That's great.
Yeah,
I mean,
somewhere like there.
dude, the visuals of going to a
Oh,
campus
yeah.
in the SEC on a Saturday, and
Yeah.
especially the Swamp. I
Oh,
mean, that had to be amazing.
I
as a
was,
16-year-old.
so I had a Florida game a month ago, and I remember it was Friday. I was just walking around campus, and I called my dad. And he's just talking. I was like, "Hey, I just walked by the crime scene." He said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, you illegally got me into a bar when I was well underage."
Hey, it's sad, isn't it? With the whole place being completely changed, the Swamp
I know it
restaurant
looks
being
great.
gone. It's terrible, man.
It looks great. But yeah,
Were you
like
close
listen,
to
like
becoming a Gator? I mean, like, I'd never asked you that. I mean, being from the state of Florida, going to Florida games growing up,
You
like,
love Dan Mullen, right?
what
I
was the
love
quarterback
Dan Mullen.
situation?
Well, the quarterback situation was stacked. Like that went to the equation. I mean, I went
Yeah.
to meetings. It was Tebow, it was Brantley, it was Cam. This was, I committed before Cam got dismissed from the football team. So they were pretty loaded. They were, obviously you look at Tebow and Cam, and I'm like, man, I don't really look like those dudes.
Right.
And
The
they were
offense, yeah.
young. And obviously Brantley was a highly recruited kid
Mhm.
too. You looked at Georgia and it was kind of Stafford. You knew Stafford was going to be 3 and done. And then they had Joe Cox and Logan Gray, who was kind of a,
Was
could
Tereshinski there
transition.
already?
No, T was out 2 years before I got there, or 3 years before I got there. So
Okay,
it
I
wasn't
forget
really
how
a
old
deep
I am
quarterback
compared to
room.
y'all. Or you, not CD.
Not
He's real
me.
old.
I do say this. It was one of those things too, where I felt like it was the expectation that I was going to go to Florida. I was the number one quarterback in the state. I was the
Mhm.
number two quarterback in the country. got the offer. So you kind of got the blessing from Urban of like, you're going to be our next guy. You're from the state, blah, 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 blah. And I think part of it deep down inside was like me kind of say like, no, like I'm not going to do what everyone else just wants me to do. I'm not going to
Yeah.
do what everyone expects me to do. Like, it was a coin flip. I love both universities, and it was really tough for me. And obviously, my being in Tampa and making life a little bit harder for my parents. I'm sure they would have loved for me just to stick home in Gainesville. But I don't know, Meg. It's kind of that. I'm sure you guys have moments too, like that want to be rebellious somewhat of like,
Mhm.
screw everyone. I'm going to forge my own path, and that means I'm going to leave the state and go to Georgia.
Your uncle's a Florida undergrad, went to Florida Law, Bull Gator, the highest donor level there is at the University of Florida. Did he wear red and black when he'd come to watch the Florida Georgia game?
No, 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 because he would sit on the Florida side.
Did
He
he
wasn't
really?
going to sit on the Georgia. Oh yeah, he would sit on the Florida side. He sat with all of his buddies that he went to school with, and they. No, he was not going to come to the Georgia side and put on the red and black. But I mean, when he came to Athens, like they
Yeah.
they came to a handful of games in Athens, and he would wear
Mm,
Georgia gear on campus. But no, in that game, him and my aunt they sat on the Florida side.
that's funny.
I mean, so I'll tell you. So, like, I mean, sometimes, like, college colors they run deep. I went
Yeah.
on a visit to Texas A&M, and my older brother, diehard Texas fan. I mean, went to Mac Brown football camp and was just eating up with Longhorns. He wore the biggest Texas starter jacket he possibly could find on my official visit to Texas A&M.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
Yeah, like he
Oh,
just wasn't going to have anything of it. And my mom and dad were so mad, but he's like, look, if you want me there, I'm going to wear this loud burnt orange starter jacket. So like now a part of me kind of appreciates that.
I'll tell you this: when I was in Gainesville for the game about a month ago, I think it was the first time I've been there on campus for a game, and like since I was maybe in high school.
mhm.
Those are some hideous colors. That combination. Just gonna be honest. No ill will
Oh,
towards Gators, but
oh,
like blue and
wow.
orange together just does not look good.
I'll say this though,
It does
the
not look
red
good
and
on
black
people.
looks great together, especially with
Yes.
girls going out looking good. I mean,
Yes.
the Georgia co-ed outfit situation is top notch. I will say that.
I
But
mean,
just
not even going
orange
to
and
defend
blue
your color
together is
combination, CD?
Orange is a tough one to pull off. Blue,
very tough.
I like the
Yes.
blue, predominantly blue
Mhm.
color, being the main one in the outfits.
Mm,
But how cool is that though? Let's talk about your first. You said you didn't go to any of the Florida Georgia games in Jacksonville when you were growing up. So your first appearance there, you're coming over the bridge. You're looking at the whole scene down there, man. What were your memories of that first initial view of what this you're about to walk into?
Well, it's crazy. It is unbelievable when you go over that bridge and because it's hard to think about what you're about to witness. You're
Hmm.
thinking like just a normal tailgate situation. And as soon as you kind of start creeping over that bridge and you get that first peek at the stadium and all the tailgating going on, all you see is just tents. I just remember seeing
Hmm.
tents and RVs everywhere of, red and black over here, orange and blue over here, RVs, RVs, RVs. I mean, it was a massive party. It was a massive party. And I've been as a fan since and have thoroughly enjoyed my time in Jacksonville, not having to play. It's an absolute blast, but it's a really cool site. And then when you get in the stadium, like I will always remember, because I have a unique vantage point of like I get up to under the center and I'm looking up,
yeah.
trying to look at the safeties, all that. I'm right in the middle of the field. And I'm right in the middle of that 50-50 split down the middle, which I
Hmm.
do like better than the Oklahoma Texas split, at the 50-yard
It
line.
used to be that way. It used to be quarters when I was
Was
playing.
it?
It was a fourth, a fourth, a fourth, and a fourth.
That's interesting. I like the way it is now
Yeah.
because I always feel like there's great energy in the stadium no matter what. And I'm telling you, like looking up for the first time and seeing that divide right down the middle of the goalpost, I'm like, this is awesome. Which
Hmm.
like that I don't know what your take on the whole thing is, but I know Kirby's been pretty adamant about wanting to make this a game that's in Athens and Gainesville, home and home, back and forth. To me, when I was being recruited, that was a sale to me. Like the fact that I got
Yeah.
to play in a pro stadium
Yeah.
and one of three environments in college football that have that atmosphere. and only two of them that do it the way. I don't know if Army Navy how they do their.
No, so Army Navy, it actually like you got the midshipmen and the cadets, but everybody else is kind of there, Aaron, just like because it's a bucket
Yeah.
list item. Like they're not really cheering
Yes.
on either school. So it's not. I went to Texas and Oklahoma this year for the first time. Incredible. Like more 50
Mm-hmm.
50 splits. Like any way we can find a way to do that.
Yes. So you're one of two. You're one of two
Yeah.
that does it. I don't know what Arkansas and A&M, what that looks like in JR World, but I don't think it's the 50-50
No.
split. So like being a part of that to me was a big factor of like why I wanted to go to one of those two schools. So I wouldn't change it, man. Like, see, you know it. I know it was a little bit different. Like you talked about the seating. It is such a special environment
Mhm.
that I hope it always stays in Jacksonville.
Well, I can tell you this from a firsthand experience. I played 2 years in Jacksonville. My junior year, we played y'all in Gainesville. My senior year, we went to Athens because they were redoing the stadium in
Mhm.
anticipation of the Jags. And man, it was fun. It was novel to get to go play there and have y'all come to our place, but it feels like every other home game. And what makes this one so special is that it stands out with all those things you've talked about. The Florida Georgia Hall of Fame is one of the coolest things. To have a Hall of Fame
Mhm.
just for one game shows the importance of it. And all you got to do, Aaron, is let's just change the recruiting rules. Let's designate one team a home team every year. They can have
Yeah.
the numbers. Like why are we going to try to take away with as much as changing in college football as is? Why would we
Mhm.
get away from one of the great longstanding traditions of this conference?
Well, and I don't even know if it's going to the game. I think Kirby's big argument is I want kids on campus. I want another weekend where I can bring kids in on Friday, show them the facilities, take them to dinner downtown Athens, walk them around the campus. Saturday, you have to feel like the environment of being on campus for a game day. But hell, man, like you look at Georgia's schedule, like this year, and I know it's not always going to be like this. You have 7 home games.
Yeah.
You have
I
plenty of
didn't know they had an
opportunity to
away
bring those
game this
guys.
year.
Yeah, like you have
Hey,
7 home games,
and you guys have
you're
a big
fine.
presence in North Florida. Like there's
Yes.
I mean, Carson Beck, a guy right out of Jacksonville. I
Mm-hmm.
would imagine getting to
Mm-hmm.
come down and play in that area is a big draw for people in that part of the state that might be recruits you're trying to
Nick
target.
Saban went to Tampa to go play USF on the
Yeah,
road. That tells you what you
Yeah.
need to know about playing games in the
exactly.
LSU
state of
plays in
Florida.
LSU is about to play Rice in Houston because
Mm-hmm.
Houston's such a big base for LSU where they get recruits and donors.
Yep.
If it makes sense, it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think it will. I think there's enough people. I know Kirby has a lot of pull. Like when you win back-to-back national championships, people listen to what you want. But I think that majority of Georgia fans, and it's a whole experience too. Like I'm getting like I had my game on Wednesday night, so I was like trying to figure out did I want to go to Jacksonville for the weekend or not. And man, I'm just so beat at the moment. 3 games in 8 days. I'm like I just
Yeah.
want a weekend where I'm not traveling and sitting on my couch watching football.
Mhm.
And I have buddies text me like, "Hey, we're gonna fly down to St. Simon's. We're gonna go golfing on Wednesday. Then we're gonna go to this dinner and event on Thursday. Then we're gonna go party on the beach on Friday. Then we're gonna drive to Jacksonville on Saturday. Then come back and then fly." And then the fraternities and sororities. Essentially, we're recording this right now on Thursday afternoon. They're off school. They're probably on the buses right now to St.
Mhm.
Simon's to go party on Frat Beach, have a great time tonight, tomorrow, and then go to the game on Saturday, then go back to Frat Beach and then come back to Athens on Sunday. So like it is just such an experience for everyone and such a great tradition, like you brought up CD, that I think the masses are kind of saying like, no, we want to stay in
Yeah.
Jacksonville. We like spending our weekends down there in South Georgia, then going over there across state lines.
Yeah, I'm about an hour and a half away from Jacksonville. It's 85 degrees and it's supposed to be the same way all weekend. Those folks are having
Mm.
a great time on Frat Beach. I wish I was a part of Frat Beach, if we're being honest. I
Yes.
mean, well, that sounds amazing right now.
CD,
Are
you
we?
don't have to
Am
tell
I
us that.
too
We
old?
know that.
We
No,
know CD
we're
likes
never
Frat
too
Beach.
old.
Wait,
Am I too old
you're
to
gonna
go
ask
Frat
Chris
Beach?
Doring if you're too old to go hang out and party? I mean, you gotta know the audience here a little
Oh,
bit. I mean,
I
we
should
know
bring
CD
CD
would.
and my brother to Frat Beach. We'd have a good time.
Oh, I love that. Oh, we got to do that.
Hey,
I don't know.
well,
Two young ones, though, man. I don't know if you could pull that one off yet.
I know.
hey,
Oh.
Aaron, CD's told me his record against Georgia about 7 times already
Yeah.
this week. We haven't asked you what was your record against Florida.
What was it?
5-0, man.
Four,
I'll count the
five.
red shirt year too. So 5-0.
I'm not going to count the red shirt year. I'm just going to count the years I played. So 3-1.
Well, if you
Convenient
added the
accounting.
red shirt year, would it be
Yeah,
3-2?
3-2. You know what he's saying.
3-2. Well, it was the first year. This was, and I did a show with a few of my buddies. So I always do like a Georgia I do a weekly Georgia show with former Letterman. So it's myself,
Yeah.
Noshan Moreno, Ben Jones, who's my starting center, Tavares King, and Brandon Boykin. And we were talking about that. It was my redshirt year. It's where we came out in our normal uniform, and then we came
Yeah.
back like 15 minutes before kickoff, and that was like our the black helmets and
Yeah.
black pants were laying in our locker room. So we're all like rushing to get ready and like trying to get all situated and this, that, and the other. And we go on the field and half the guys like helmets weren't fitting properly, the pants didn't fit right.
Yeah.
It was just an absolute mess. Boykin was saying like his visor kept falling off. It was an absolute nightmare. Not making excuses. We just got our butt whooped. Like just it was a
Yeah.
massacre. It was
That
Tebow's last year.
wasn't that who was the wrestler that played for you guys back in the day, the WWE guy?
Oh, oh
What
my
wasn't
gosh,
he
I should know
there? Like
this.
led y'all
He
out or
was there.
something? Yeah.
I think so. And it was bad, bad, bad,
Yeah.
bad. And then obviously, the fans want to blame the uniforms. It was the uniform's fault, which now that I'm hearing like Boykin, he's like, yeah, my visor literally kept falling apart in my helmet during the game. He said, I just remember that first possession trying to fix it, and all of a sudden Riley Cooper's mossing me in the end zone.
Good
All right.
times. I love it.
So let's get into like this year's game, the matchup this year. Georgia's still undefeated, still number one team in the country, but they've had two dogfights, South Carolina and Auburn. And this Florida team, even though they're not ranked, I think we do forget they're 5-2. They're still a 5-2
Mm-hmm.
football team. The teams that they lost to, a really good Utah team, and then Kentucky really was like a perfect storm for them in that game, how it started. So it's a good Florida team. It's not the best Florida team, but a good Florida team. How do you think it plays out on Saturday?
Mm. I think it depends on a couple things. I think it depends on can Florida run the football. And I think people get confused with Georgia when they're like, oh, the D line's not that good, or the D line's not what it's been the past 2 years, but that's still a really good Georgia defensive front, and all in a tremendous defense. And I love the secondary. Like the secondary is the strength of this team, which is a little bit different than kind of how they've been built the past couple of years. But Florida, it's just been, I don't know, CD. It feels like to me they've been so inconsistent running the football this
Yeah.
year. You got two great running backs in Johnson and ETN. You got a quarterback that's been accurate. Like you can get Eugene Wilson involved in unique ways, even in the run game as well. Like, why are they not running the ball successfully? Like, why can't this offensive line get the job done? So if that part of the offense does come to life, then that to me that's a different ball game because Georgia's secondary, like I alluded to, that's the strength. So if Graham Mertz is in third and long situations, that's going to be a long day for this offense. But if you can get to a third and medium and run the ball effectively on first and second down, all of a sudden, I think you have seen a quarterback that's done a good job of getting the ball out quick, finding his playmakers, letting Pearsall and Eugene do their thing, and the tight end as well. So that's going to be the key. First, second down success. Can you run the football for Florida? Don't get behind the chains. And then flip it over the other side for Florida. Like if you can just keep everything in front. Like I've been trying to tell people all week, like they get confused. I'm not saying that Georgia's better without Brock Bowers. Georgia has the opportunity to be more explosive because of now things are going to be more what Bobo's used to doing, running the football, play action passes, throwing the ball down the field. So young secondary, and you have four Georgia receivers right now that are playing really well, especially with McConkey back, and a quarterback that's playing with a lot of confidence. Can you limit the explosive plays that Bobo is going to want to hit?
All right. I want to look at quarterback comparisons here, man. I as a Florida guy, when Graham Mertz made the announcement he was coming over through the portal from Wisconsin, I was not all that smoked up about it. I don't know. A lot of people here in the SEC had him probably in the bottom third of quarterbacks heading into the season. But I think if you looked at that now, you probably have him in the top 5 quarterbacks in the league based upon how he's played. What are your thoughts and impressions of things that you've seen him do really well and things we didn't necessarily see him do at Wisconsin that he's now having an opportunity to do well at?
Well, I'll admit I had him dead last in the SEC heading in, like I did my preseason rankings of quarterbacks, and he was number 14 for me.
Yeah.
And he's been a huge surprise to myself, I think, to Florida fans. And I remember when I sat down with the coaching staff when I had him earlier on the season, they just kept raving about his work ethic, and they have like this film study room, walkthrough room there in their new facility, and just the hours that they said that he was in there walking through plays and just understood that this was his next is he had a second shot
Yeah.
to re-identify who he was as a quarterback, and he's taken the most of it. So, to me, when I watch him, accurate quarterback, takes care of it. I love their offense, honestly. Like, I love all the shifts and motions, and he does a great job of deciphering what the defense wants to do once they kind of get set in their final positions. And he's taking care of the football. So, like, you have a quarterback that's completing over 75% of his passes, only a couple interceptions on the season. It may not be flashy all the time, but it's been very efficient. Like, this should still be an offense that goes through the running game. He's been the strength, not the running game. So I don't know what more you can ask from Graham Mertz, honestly.
The one of the things they talked about a lot in the spring was like, we love this guy. He's so smart, as you talked about. He's a great leader. He can throw with great accuracy, but our offense is going to give him an opportunity to do things he didn't at Wisconsin, be in the shotgun more and be able to tag plays at the line of scrimmage that have some options that he didn't necessarily have control of at Wisconsin. Like, how much does being in the shotgun alone help you as a quarterback in terms of being able to maybe have a little extra time or see the field a little bit better, or anything else that it might give you an advantage of?
Well, and I would say this, he probably has significantly better receivers too. So I
Yes.
think that also helps from where he was at Wisconsin. I think that the uniqueness of the shotgun, I thought it's not unique anymore, but kind of when I was playing, we were mostly a 21 personnel under
Yeah,
center,
us
had the
too. Yeah.
fullback, which shout out to Sam Houston and UTEP last night. UTEP had a little fullback they kept putting in there, which I loved. Um, the quick game, it allows you to be more effective in the quick game. It allows you, especially nowadays with the RPOs and the bubble screens, like, you wonder why. I always set the parameter of, like, a good quarterback 10 years ago, could you complete around 63% of your passes? Now, all of a sudden, you look at quarterbacks, like, you got to complete 70% of your passes.
Yeah.
Why? Because everything's quick game. And you're gonna throw, a lot of these offenses are gonna throw at minimum 5 to 7 to 8 either bubbles or quick screens on the outside. Georgia does it too. You have off coverage, boom, just get our playmakers the ball in space as fast as you can and let them go out there and eat. And these quarterbacks have done a great job of being like middle infielders, shortstop, second baseman, catching, ripping, turning, and getting it out as quickly as they can, laces or no laces. So it just allows you to do so much more offensively in the quick game, compared to, like, if you have to get the ball from under center, take a 3-step drop or a quick 5. Even those plays are a little bit more long developing. Like, you're not able to throw the bubble screen, you're not able to throw the quick screen on the outside. So I think it just gives you more options. And for a team right now that's trying to play ball control in Florida, that's just trying to get the ball to playmakers like Eugene and Pearsall in space, it sets up nicely for a quarterback that's in gun that can get out of his hands.
Now, Aaron, like normally, like on pregame in the SEC, we pregame and we talk about all the games coming up this weekend in the SEC. But when you look at the slate, South Carolina at A&M, Mississippi State at Auburn, Vandy at Ole Miss, Tennessee at Kentucky, which could be a good game, and certainly the one we're talking about here in Jacksonville, there's not really ones that maybe could move the needle as far as championship aspirations. Maybe Tennessee at Kentucky. So I want to kind of ask you like a totality question of the SEC, where you see it right now. Georgia, obviously in the East right there, number one. Missouri right underneath them. And then you look over in the West, and it's still very undecided with Ole Miss, LSU, and Alabama. But I want to ask you about Mizzou as they sit there, because CD and I have been such big fans of Kentucky over the last couple of years. And it feels like Kentucky
I'm
gets to
there.
a point and they can't get over that point. Now, that point's great, but they can't get over that point. I don't know why, but I feel like Mizzou can this year. And I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means losing to Georgia
You
and
know what it
beating
means.
everybody else.
You're saying that they got a chance to beat Georgia. Where
Oh, I know,
They
no.
do.
I think they do have a chance, but I'm saying
They
if
do have a
Mizzou goes out there and
chance.
they're 10-2, CD, I don't want to be disrespectful to say just because you lost to LSU and Georgia, you didn't break through that barrier.
Yeah.
I think this team's different, Aaron. I mean, I think Kirby Moore, I think Blake Baker are two of the best young coordinators in football. You've got Brady Cook, receivers. I mean, running back. Like, you have
They're
everything.
all young. Well,
Yeah.
and they'll be back next year too. Yeah, I remember that when you look at this offense. Like, a lot of those guys are going to be back on that side of the football, and how much they've grown in a year. And a lot of people don't realize this, but Brady Cook had a partially torn labrum last season. And I had an opportunity to sit down with the coaching staff and Brady before the first game of the season. I had him and talk with him about that, and just how much more confidence he has as a thrower, how much stronger his arm feels with all the rehab he did this offseason. And he looks the part. And it was so funny because I was on the call for the game early in the season, and I'm talking about how good he looks and how smooth he looks. And I have all these Missouri fans just ripping me on social media. you're an idiot. You don't know quarterback play. We need to start Sam Horn. Sam Horn's our guy. You need to start talking good about Sam Horn. And I was at practice the day before, and I'm watching it, and Sam Horn's like 6'5", throws like a 95 mile
Yeah.
per hour fastball, I guess. And I was like, you would have thought it was the other way around throwing the football.
Yeah.
Sam Horn does not translate from baseball to throwing a football when it comes to arm strength. It was weird. It looked like Brady was the one that could pick up a baseball and throw it 95 miles per hour off the mound. So I've been really impressed by them, no doubt about it. Going back real quick, I was with you. I love Kentucky. And I thought
Yeah.
Devin Leary was going to be an absolute stud. He's been, to me, the biggest disappointment of
Yep.
The
anyone in this
biggest. I
SEC this
mean,
year.
just missing throws that I feel
Miles.
like all three of us can make. Certainly Aaron can make
Yeah.
them, but just not even remotely close. Even the Georgia game, like, yeah,
Oh,
they
yeah.
probably always would have been, the score what it was. But I mean, he had opportunities in that game. You got a guy open
Mhm.
like on a corner route, and you're throwing it 3 rows deep in the stand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there. I mean, I was right there on the sideline. He almost hit me, for goodness sakes. That's how far that ball was out of bounds. So, yeah, that's been a disappointment, especially with those weapons. And I know they've been, he's had some drops with
Yeah.
issues with drops here or there, but man, he's just not looked good at all. Like, it was funny. Like, oh my God, Kentucky won the transfer quarterback battle this
For sure.
offseason, and Florida lost it. Yeah, you kind of wish that if you're a Kentucky
Yeah.
fan, it would have been the opposite when it comes to quarterbacks, the way he's played. But no, Missouri has everything. You got a run game going right now with Schrader.
Yeah.
Brady Cook really hasn't run at all this season till last week.
Yeah.
You can't forget, like, that is one of the strengths of his game, is able to run the football. I love all three receivers. And they got a good defense, and they got some length on the back end too. Like, their corners are long. And I've said this all season too, like, no one is going to stop LSU. I don't even know if Alabama is going to be able to stop LSU. So, like, I'm not even mad about that. LSU can pick a number and say, let's go get that number against almost anyone in the country. That's just a tough matchup for most teams. And Missouri was leading for
Yeah.
part of that game too. Let's not forget that. So, do they have a chance to beat Georgia? Hell yeah. They got to bye. They got 2 weeks to get right. Georgia's going to be coming off a rivalry game. We'll see what that game looks like this weekend. You're still without Brock Bowers. You almost beat him last year. Like, yeah, 100% that could happen in 2 weeks, or I guess a week from now, in Athens, Georgia.
We talk an awful lot about it. It's not who you play, but in what order you play them.
Yeah.
And this run that Georgia's about to embark on, Florida, Missouri, at home against Ole Miss, and then on the road against Tennessee. I don't remember a schedule for a contender with as many difficult successive week games in a row that Georgia has to face. Like, when you look at it, do you think they make it through unscathed?
I'm just glad that we have an outsider saying that, because I've been having to deal with BS all year about the schedule so easy, and we give Georgia this easy schedule. What's going on? And it did look a lot easier at the beginning of the season than what it is now. So, like, I'm glad that people are like, okay, well, I guess it's going to at least finish off strong for them.
Yeah.
It would be better if they drop one now and not the SEC championship, because I think if Georgia loses one of those games, can't be Missouri, obviously, because then Missouri would be in control of going to Atlanta. But say they drop it to Ole Miss or Tennessee and still get to Atlanta and win that game, a 12-1 Georgia's going to most likely be in the playoffs, unless there's an undefeated Oklahoma, Washington, Michigan, and FSU. But one of those teams is going to drop one at some point. So I think Georgia would get in and with even one loss, but you can't lose an SEC championship game. So I'd rather one now than later. Can they drop one? Yeah, of course they can. They've played some close
You're
games this
dancing
year.
around it. I want to know, will they lose one?
I don't think so. I think the fact that they're home, like, I'm not sold on. I think Tennessee's a good defense, and playing in Knoxville's a pain in the butt, but I think they'll be able to eliminate what they want to do offensively. And Kirby, you look at what Tennessee's been like for 2 years against Kirby's defense. They haven't been able to do anything at all. So I think Georgia wins that game, and the other two games are at home. So the schedule does set up nicely for getting both Ole Miss and Missouri in Athens. So I'll say no. I think 12-0.
Yeah. What about in the West? How does it play out in the West? Because obviously Alabama doesn't have a loss, but they still have to play LSU. Ole Miss actually plays Georgia, which is very, very intriguing. But if it all becomes a tie, if somehow becomes a tie, then it goes to your East opponent record. And one scale for Ole Miss has Georgia, but you got to go all the way down for Vanderbilt as their other East opponent. And so you start to look at Alabama's played Tennessee, and they're going to play Kentucky. LSU is Florida and Missouri. So even that, all of that's going to be extremely close, depending on how that tiebreaker goes out. But still, a lot has to happen.
Yeah. Oh, obviously, you said Ole Miss has to go into Athens and win that football game. I think LSU comes out of it. I do. I think LSU comes out of it, and I don't know if it's just because I've been, picking LSU the entire season. I'm going to stick to my guns or what, but it's hard for me as someone who knows offenses, and we've all seen elite offenses and what they can do to think that that offense is going to be slowed down this year. Like even if they score in the mid to high 30s versus Alabama, and I don't care how bad LSU's defense is, I think Alabama is just kind of playing with fire right now on the offense side of the football. You live and die by the 3-pointer in basketball. They're living and dying by the explosive play on the offense side of the football, and I just don't know if that's sustainable at all. Or I know LSU's offense is sustainable. Their ability to push the ball down the field, the running game now, with their backs, the ability of obviously Jaden to run the football. I love the
Yeah.
offensive line. So I think they go into Tuscaloosa in 9 days, 8 days from now and win that football game. And then from there, they got like A&M
Florida
really
and
is the big one
A&M,
left.
and
Florida
both at
A&M
home.
at home. Yeah, the rest of the games are at home for LSU besides Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, because
So
they've
for
been
me,
on the
that
road a
this is
bunch. Yeah.
yeah. So I like LSU to be out of it. And I mean, I think LSU is one of the best teams in the country. That offense scares the crap out of me. Like I think they can. I think they could beat Georgia in the SEC championship game. It's just gonna be interesting if they do.
Hmm.
Would you put an 11-2 LSU Tigers in the playoffs?
Yeah. Hey, is Alabama not the most difficult team to try to figure out this year? I mean, I saw so many holes that I thought were just going to be places that would create some stumbles for them, and they found a way to overcome. They find a way to overcome the penalties. They find a way to overcome the mistakes. Like I don't know whether or not Alabama's a really good team or not, but they somehow just keep winning despite what their
Yeah.
challenges are.
Yeah, I don't know either. I really that's what I'm saying. Like I love the fight. I love the. I it's like the first time in my life. I think I told Cole this the other day. We are doing the series show. The first time in my life, like I actually not like say I'm cheering for Alabama, but like enjoy watching
It
Alabama
makes
without
you
being
like them,
pissed
right?
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're likable. They're way more likable. So eh, it just the way Saban has been, the way Milrow was in that post game last week
Yep.
with Jenny Dell, like you could
Yeah.
just like it's hard not to sit back and like smile. Like I got
Mm-hmm.
myself like smiling watching the post game interviews on the field. Like, oh, I'm happy for them.
It's because
But
they have to like dig deep and like find a
I
way like
know
you feel like you've had to
a
do in
good
your
story.
past. And it's like before,
Yes.
and because they had such good players, good coaching, all of that, whatever, it
Hmm.
just looked easy for
Mm-hmm.
them. We know it's not easy, but it looked easy. And now like Milro's having to find a way, like there's pressure and he finds a way to get the ball off and it's a touchdown to
Hmm.
Burton the other way. And so I think it's such a different version of Alabama. That's what makes you appreciate it.
So I just don't believe that they can win a championship with an offense that is so Jekyll and Hyde. I still think in today's game, you need an offense that's going to have that has the ability on a dime to say, okay, let's go score 40 points. There will be a game
Yeah.
like that. Even Georgia's had to do that for the past couple of years too, where they've had games where they're like, okay, we got to go. Defense doesn't have it today. We got to go score 40. And I don't know if they can do that just on a flick of his wrist from Jalen.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah, that's
getting
going to
into
have
a
to be the
track
model,
meet.
it feels like,
Yeah.
for LSU for sure, right? I mean, if you're LSU, you
Well,
want
it's
that
gonna be a
game to
track
turn into
meet.
a track meet.
Hmm. Which I think it can. Like listen, I love Alabama's defense, but there's not a team that has enough good DBs to be able to slow down three really good receivers and an accurate quarterback.
Are,
And you could say like, hey, play cover two and just get after the quarterback. Well, Diggs is kicking butt.
Yeah.
Jaden's a great quarterback and a great runner. And I think LSU is the best offensive line in the SEC. So like if I'm LSU, like fine, just play too high. We'll just run the ball to death
Yeah.
against you.
all right, man. I'm gonna leave you with the most challenging task of the afternoon so far, man. Rank the teams in the SEC East, please.
Rank the teams in the SEC East.
Yeah.
All right, Georgia, Missouri.
Okay.
Tennessee.
The Tennessee that
This is
lost to
tough.
Florida a couple weeks ago.
I know. That's why I was like, ooh, ooh,
He was waiting for you.
He was definitely
It's
waiting for
tough.
that
I'm
one.
telling you, it's tough.
I know it's tough.
I'll have a counter argument for.
Yeah. I'll stick with Tennessee, Florida, Kentucky, South Carolina, Vanderbilt.
You saw what Kentucky did to Florida too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. There's that 3 right there is just like a little. Let's
It's
just beat
tough.
each other up and just make it really hard in the middle of the SEC East. If we would play those, like if we had a little round robin tournament this weekend of those 3 teams, I would still put my money on Tennessee to come out of it because of the defense.
And I think that's the crazy part about it is like how good Tennessee is at home versus on the road. And maybe the one solace that people will take if you're thinking about.
Well, you said the same thing about Florida too. How good they are at home compared to on the road.
Is this not been a much like I don't know that there's ever been a home field advantage matter more than this season for the teams in the SEC than what it has.
Yeah. I'm just glad they finally got that one for South Carolina. I mean, I just would have been, kind of feeling it for Billy Napier if they lost that game. So kind of get that, won a big game on the road.
It's amazing what beating a 2-win team will do for your fan base's optimism. Like, a team that was up by 10 with less than 5 to go too.
What do you think? Oh shit, wait. Because I know Georgia fans like, oh, it's Florida's 5-2. And I like Florida. Like I've been trying to defend Florida to our boy T-Bob this week because he's like, they're not a good team. Like, no, they're a good team. Like, I do believe they're heading in the right direction, but they have a horrendous end of the season. Besides Arkansas, at LSU, at Missouri, and then Florida State.
They could finish 1-4. I mean, after being 5-2, you finish 6-6 for the 3rd straight year. I don't know what that does for your.
So the win for Georgia, if Georgia does win, may look good now, but in 4 weeks, you may be just saying like, oh, we beat a 6-6 football team.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's a good thing for Georgia. And as we get ready to wrap up today, it doesn't matter. All Georgia's got to do is win because of what they've done the 2 years before that. Just win and you're in. And so that's when you're in the benefit of the doubt club because you've earned it. Then that's the luxury that you have. It doesn't matter 6-6, 5-7 doesn't matter. All you have to do is win. All right, before we let you go, score prediction on Saturday: Florida, Georgia, Georgia, Florida, whatever y'all want to call it. What's the score at the end of the 4th quarter?
42-17 Georgia.
Wow.
42-17.
42-17.
Hey, I will say this though. I do think
rebuttal CD. I mean, anything.
The lock of the weekend is the over. The total's 47.5. I think that thing goes
really
over. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, too bad my Bucky T-Bob, it takes forever to put my bets in. I'm still waiting for him to put my current bets in at the moment, and that may not be happening.
Look, Aaron, just text me when I'm next to T-Bob in the morning, and I'll tell him because that's the only way that you're going to get that done.
I don't want to say, I feel like it's not that hard to pick up your phone and get on DraftKings and just put 5 bets in, right? Right?
Texting T-Bob and getting a response is one of the hardest things I do in my life.
He's got a bunch of kids running around, right? How many kids?
Look, he's got 3. Okay. I mean,
Hester has like 10 kids.
Yeah.
That's all we're talking about. Like,
do you even have a 12-passenger church van? No. Okay, then. Yeah, then we can talk to somebody else. Aaron, man, you're the man.
Nothing was more entertaining than me walking into LSU facility, like a month and a half ago before I had their game. And up comes Hester in his giant van beeping at me. I was like, who is this clown driving the giant van over here? Oh, it's Hester.
That's right, baby. The Hester Mobile. Aaron, you're the man. We appreciate it. I know you just got home from a game and you gave us almost an hour. So we always appreciate it, brother.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, man.
All right, there he is, Aaron Murray, getting ready for this matchup in Jacksonville coming up on Saturday. That's going to do it for us here on Pregaming the SEC week number 9. Subscribe, like, do all that jazz on YouTube. We appreciate you listening here on SiriusXM SEC Radio Channel 374. Enjoy the slate, and we'll see you for week 10 of Pregaming the SEC. Same time, same place.